Welcome to another video, Purple Political Talk here. Today is Monday, June 28th, 2021, and today we're going to be discussing the 2024 presidential election and looking at what a 2024 Democratic landslide could look like. So, for this matchup, we're going to use just a generic Republican and Joe Biden, and we're going to look what is Joe Biden's best case scenario if absolutely everything goes right for him. So before we get started with the video though, I want to remind you guys to like, subscribe, turn on post notifications to be up to date with our latest content. You guys don't want to miss any of the new content we have coming out. Now that I got that out of the way, let's get started with the video. So, this matchup, the initial phases are going to be pretty similar. Your traditional safe states will likely be traditional safe states. And as far as safe states goes for both sides, those more likely than not will be untouched, except the GOP, who will lose some safe states, and the Democrats, who will gain a couple. So, I just want to start off this prediction by filling in the map like I usually would, and then show you guys the different characterizations and the different changes that would come into the map, considering it is a best case scenario for the GOP, meaning a couple things. One, that more likely than not means that they're going to be, bringing up their margins. They're going to be bringing up their support everywhere, even in areas that are traditionally Republican. So that's the first thing I wanted to show you guys, the initial map, and then we'll go from there and give you guys my prediction for this election. So this starting off map looks pretty good from where we usually start. So I'm gonna start by showing the characterizations that would be taken away from the GOP, moving them into the toss-up column. You have Alaska and you have South Carolina. I think that's where we would look at, and I think at the end of the day, moving into the likely column as well in the future would be a state like Montana. I think this is where we're going to start for the GOP, where they lose some states, and as for the Democrats, they would be getting a lot of support in Colorado and Virginia. And I think, and even in a best case scenario for Joe Biden, maybe even win by New Hampshire. I mean, not maybe as much by a safe margin, maybe very narrowly, but I think this is where we could start off for this 2024 best case scenario for the Democrats. Now let's go on to the likely states, the states that I believe will go by less than 15%. These states are going to be interesting to take a look at because the Democrats have a lot of areas where they could excel in. However, it's going to be interesting to see how well they do in certain of these areas. So let's take a look at the Democratic likely states. In a best case scenario for Joe Biden, states like Nevada would definitely be won by likely margins, probably like 6, 7, 8%. Same thing in Minnesota and Michigan as well. I think that Joe Biden, in a best case scenario, could go on and sweep almost the Midwest. I think he could win actually even Pennsylvania and Wisconsin by around 5% if absolutely everything goes right for him. This does not necessarily mean that everything will go right. However, this is a possibility if all the cards, play out in the deck for Joe Biden. And I think the Democrats, if they have a really good midterm and they have a really good, end period, and they really have nothing to be attacked on, which, trust me, they will. But if they don't have that, I think the possibilities of we seeing a scenario that looks somewhat like this could be likely. So I think this is where the Joe Biden likely states. And just with that, he already gets the 275 electoral votes needed to win the race. Now, as for the GOP, their likely states would be, the states that were safe before, and I think that is where it's going to end. I mean, the GOP is going to be dealing with a little bit of less votes in certain areas of the country. They're going to, they're going to battle with some voter loss. So I think in a best case scenario, of course, and if that ends up being the scenario, the GOP, after likely states, only have 125 electoral votes. Moving on to the lean states for the Democrats, these are states that would go by less than 5%, but more than 1% and 1.5%. So taking a look at that, we could say, states like Arizona, Georgia, I would go as far as saying even states like North Carolina. These states could go around by 2, 3, 4% in a best case scenario for Joe Biden in the 2024 presidential election. Now, somewhere else I'm looking, Nebraska's 2nd district. This district might be gerrymandered. However, even if it is, and it still holds its urban type of district, I think it's pretty likely that we might see a victory for Joe Biden in that district with a lean margin come 2024 in a best case scenario. This already puts us at 319 electoral votes. Now, going to the Republican side, I think that one state that for sure they're going to win no matter what is the state of Iowa, even in the best case scenario, and I think they would do that by a lead margin. You know, I think Iowa has gone way too far, and it's going to be very difficult for any Democrat, even Joe Biden, and even in the best case scenario, to bring down those margins that much to the point where he could be winning the state. It could get a lot closer, and of course it will. You know, it's no longer the 10 points if you're talking a best case scenario. It's more like 3 or 4. But I think that at the end of the day, it's really going to come down to that. Now, going on to the tilt state, these are the states that are, you know, deciding factors how big Joe Biden's victory in a landslide scenario is. You know, it's going to come down to Texas, Florida, Ohio, and then Maine's 2nd district. I have one thing for sure, Maine's 2nd district, in a best case scenario. Biden wins that narrowly. I think that in a regular scenario, Republicans could take it up by around 3 to 4 points. Sometimes a little bit less depending on the candidate. But I think that Biden could take this very narrowly in a best case scenario. That already puts him at 320. As far as the rest of these states go, I think that Biden has a possibility to win in Texas. You know, very narrowly in a best case scenario. I think he's going to have enough votes, you know, amongst suburban voters, even if he goes out and convinces some rural voters. And again, this is an optimal scenario where he gets a lot of support nationwide from a lot of people, even from some Republicans. If that does end up happening, he could be winning in the state of Texas. That already puts him over the 350 landslide scenario. So this is one of the few scenarios where we can actually see a landslide scenario. Now, as far as Florida and Ohio go, I really doubt that Joe Biden could win here. I think that the GOP wins very narrowly in these states in a best case scenario landslide for Joe Biden. You know, we're almost to the point where in Florida it's going to be very hard for the Democrats to win regardless because of the amount of support the GOP has. And even if they lose some support, in Florida standards, the GOP will still win the race. And in Ohio, I think it just comes down to them having a lot of support. And then even in the best case scenario, it's going to be a little bit tough. You're going to be in a similar train that you are in Iowa. You know, I think at the end of the day, if Joe Biden can win by a landslide, that would be shocking, or any Democrat, because we don't really know for sure if Biden is going to be the nominee. Now, if this does end up happening, and to this extent where we see a blue Texas and a completely blue Rust Belt, and essentially in real terms, a blue Sun Belt, the Democrats are really in for a very long time of governing, because if they can hold on to all of these areas, they're going to have that White House election after election after the election. So I think that's something that's going to be very interesting. And yeah, so my final prediction for a landslide best case scenario for the Democrats in the 2024 United States presidential election is 360 votes for them and 178 for the Republicans. So guys, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If so, please give a huge thumbs up, like, subscribe, turn on post notifications to be up to date with our latest content. And guys, I also want to remind you guys, or actually tell you guys, that I have a very interesting election night coming out very soon, so stay tuned for that. Thank you so much for watching, and goodbye.